That's
All right, guys, fair warning. This is going to be a little brutal in terms of how to get your emails to land in the inbox and to do it properly because there's some tech setup and almost every software they use, whether you use Go High Level, KissOS, Flowdesk, Active Campaign, whatever it is, almost all of them are going to be set up essentially the same, right? In my example here, I'm just going to show you what you need to do from a Go High Level standpoint, and then you can correlate that everywhere else, right? So the first thing that most people miss is the actual setup of the domains themselves to protect the domain reputation. And what I mean by that is a lot of people skip this step, send out a mass email to 20,000 people, right? And out of those 20,000 people, they all report you as spam. And then from then on out, your domain, if you're using your primary domain as the sending domain, is burnt forever, right? It'll always go to spam. There's nothing you can do once you burn a domain. It's kind of like a phone number. To protect it, what has happened is Go High Level has added this configuration where, so step one is, hey, make sure you're actually sending from your own domain. And I'll explain why here shortly. But the next part of it is you want to make sure that from a tech standpoint, you're configured properly. And I'll explain what this means, right? They allow you to set it up for payments, one-on-one conversations, bulk email, campaigns, workflows, and so on and so forth, right? This, from the end user perspective, doesn't make a difference. But from a tech perspective and an email provider perspective, it means a lot. For example, in this particular case, one-on-one conversations with clients or prospects or workflows, that usually means that they're very high value, okay? And what we don't want to do is burn workflow.unstoppable365.com or personal.unstoppable365.com from the CRM with bulk emails, right? So this way, if we burn reply.unstoppable365.com, we just create another domain and we just keep sending stuff to our list, okay? So that's one of the first things that you want to make sure that's set up properly. Then the next thing that you want to make sure that is set up properly is your verify the domain properly. Okay. And there's a step that people usually miss. Usually these top parts is just what's required to get the email working, right? Or the software working. But what usually gets missed, because you have to manually add it 99% of the time, is this DMARC email, right? And I'll explain what that looks like. So I'm just going to show you from a Chase email that just got sent to me, right? So notice how this domain matches this domain, right? So everything looks good there. And if you come over to see original message, the SPF, which is passed, the domain has passed, right? Because it checks off, and then the DMARC has passed. As long as these things pass, there's a 95% chance that it's going to show up in the inbox unless the person has specifically said, hey, this is spam, okay? And setting all this stuff up is how you fix that, right? Or start down that path, okay? The other stuff is just to protect the reputation, especially if you're doing bulk emails or anything like that, is the key. The next part of it is you want to make sure that you warm up the domain properly. If you just set it up, don't immediately start sending out 20,000 emails, okay? The next part of this is making sure that your emails are written properly from that perspective. And I'm just going to come over to the template. The larger the images or the more images that you put in an email, the more likely they are to go to spam, right? The body, if there's a lot of links in there, the more links, more likely to go to spam or more likely to go to the promo, right? If you're using a lot of emojis, right? That right there probably isn't a good thing, right? This probably went to spam. If you're using a lot of emojis or a lot of capital letters, it will send it to spam or promos, okay? If you have specific call to action up here, it could go to spam or to promos. The next part of it is when the provider, email provider, when they receive the email, looks at the email and scans it and decides which folder it's going to go into. To keep it out of spam, as an example, you have to have this stuff in there because it wants to have opt-out language. It wants to see that you're verifying like who you are. The copyright, the location, which is the business name, the email, and the unsubscribe button is a lot of stuff that they're looking for from that perspective. when it comes to emails. The last thing to think about as you're starting to send emails and you're starting to send things out to people is make sure, especially now, they're starting to look at AI written emails. And you want to make sure that you go through and adjust your emails specifically to not be so much of just AI written content, right? It's going to start sending that stuff to the inbox itself. The last thing to think about when it comes to email. So I'll just kind of show you our profile here. Okay. Email analytics. So we have a pretty high open rate, 47%, which is awesome. Let's see what it looks like for the foreseeable future here. Cool. Let's see what so we're at almost a 60% open rate, right? We have a pretty high click rate as well, because the emails that we send out is very targeted. They have the proper subject line. We're not just blasting out our entire list, because as soon as you start blasting the entire list, your unsubscribes, your bounce rates, your complaint rates or failed rates start to increase. And as those increase, you're more likely to go into spam or more likely to go into the promo or some other random tab. So even though we have privacy mode here, right? So we have 17,562 contacts. Notice how we've only sent in the last 90 days about 3,100 emails. And because if we sent emails to this entire list every day, all the time, what's going to happen is it's just going to go to spam, right? Because people just don't open it, or they start to just get annoyed with the emails. So make sure you're taking care of the domain on the front end. You're taking care of how you write the emails, how you send the emails, the frequency of how you send those emails, and then also make sure that the list that you're sending to are actual active prospects. We typically recommend, if the prospect hasn't opened an email within 90 days, stop sending it to them, or only send one a month or one a quarter to that person. Otherwise, it's just going to hurt your domain reputation overall. If you have any questions on this, feel free to jump on the tech and operations calls or shoot me a DM and I can definitely help.